Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Disruptor Discussions Masterclass Season 2. My name is Jennifer Fry, and I am your hostess, and I'm super happy you guys are here today. I will be introducing our superstar guest in a few moments here, but before I do, I'll give you guys a little background and what we're here to do today. So I started Appreciated Asset in 2018 after really spending my whole career in sales and helping businesses grow their revenue through my efforts. And so I started a service with doing appointment setting where we help our clients grow their businesses again through our service. You know, our mission is to create a ripple effect for incredible business solutions, helping them grow through recognition of their disruption in the marketplace. And disruption is all about how to offer service that is so superior to the status quo that you are setting yourself apples to oranges outside of anyone else that's in your space. So with our mission being to grow these businesses and to help create these ripple effects, we started the Disruptor Discussions Masterclass because I realized that there were so many other businesses out there and experts that I had met along the way that also helped businesses grow with their own expertise. And I wanted to highlight them. I wanted to give them this stage, to give them the spotlight, to talk about how they grow businesses and grow revenue for other businesses through their service, but also to talk about how they are stepping outside of status quo, how they are destroying the industry standard and doing things in a way that is so far superior that we are able to create our own niche and our own level of service, standard of service. So at Disruptor Discussions, we know that there are 0 problems that cannot be solved in a business with more revenue, 0. So with that said, we are super excited to have Dave Ingram here from Query. Hey, Dave.
Hey, Jennifer, thanks for having me.
Super excited. I'm going to introduce you in a moment here with your bio, which is ridiculously impressive. I want to tell you guys first what we have new at Appreciated Asset. May 6th, we have an event here in Charleston coming up, which is going to be Flip Your World in 40 Days by Living Like a Disruptor. And it is a collaboration with a former guest, actually from the show, Hillary DeCesar, is going to be joining us here in Charleston. She's coming from California. We're going to be doing an afternoon workshop followed by a really beautiful dinner party. And anyone who's in the area or would like to come to the area, let us know. We'll have limited seats for that, and it's going to be a really beautiful evening. So we're excited for that. And then I also like to share with you guys our disruptor hack. You know, I love breaking the rules and finding different ways, shortcuts, or whatever you want to call them, to do what we all want to get done anyway. And today I'm going to focus on high vibe activities. So one of the things that I really notice as an empath is that my vibration, like the way that I operate, is really affected by what's around me, whether it's what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, where I'm spending my time and attention. It almost goes back to our tagline with the business is what you appreciate appreciates, right? Like wherever you are putting your focus, that's what will amplify. So what I did, and I'm going to kind of share this with you guys quickly, not the whole list, I promise. But I decided that I realized I'd been operating kind of from lower vibration than typical. And so I wanted to really refocus myself, my attention, my activities towards high vibe events and things that really light me up. So I started making a list, and I want to encourage you guys to do the same thing. And what was really interesting when I did this is it started like really simple, like sunshine, fresh air, iced coffee. Like these are my high vibe things that just put me in a better place. But then the more I did it, I would like keep this with me. And now I've got like all of these things that really put me in a better place. I'll tell you what's not on the list. Scrolling. What's not on the list, right? Like binge watching. I've decided like that is not a good activity for me. I'm one of those people that like just pulls in all the emotions that I'm observing. So I would encourage you guys to do the same and get really curious for yourselves and start to become a little more aware of what really fills you up and what depletes you. And it may not be the most obvious things. So I kind of, at the end of the list, it was like floating. I love just like floating in the pool. I know that sounds so silly, but it's just such like a sensory deprivation experience that I love that. Or glitter in the water. We're here in Charleston, we're around water all the time, which is amazing. And there's this part of the day where the sun gets on the water and the water just glitters. It's the most beautiful thing. Um, and being able to see joy and things like that in things that you see every day is a really, really beautiful way to become aware. So I just encourage you all to do the same for yourselves. All right, you guys, I am so excited and honored to introduce Dave Ingram to you. Dave has been a colleague and a friend for, gosh, about a year now, I think, right?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah. And what they are doing at Query is so incredibly disruptive. I have absolutely loved watching them grow since we first met. Dave is the founder and CEO of Query, an AI-powered data software company based out of Charleston, South Carolina, which lets you work with your data using natural language. He has always been passionate about solving complex problems using the latest methods and technologies, which he strived to implement as a product strategist at Acquia, and then Oracle. With a grandfather who built radio stations and a father who was the chief engineer at a TV station, Dave grew up surrounded by technology and a love for new tech. He started using a computer at age 5 and never stopped learning since. Empowering the local tech scene is important to Dave, and it is one of the reasons he left his corporate job to found his startup in Charleston. Dave is also on the board of Charleston Hacks, a local nonprofit that brings coders together and has been organizing data science and virtual reality meetups in the Charleston area for over 5 years. Dave lives in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina with his wife and Query co-founder, Amy Ingram, who's also here today, and his 3 boys. Gosh, Dave, I can barely handle 1 boy. God bless. So, Dave, thank you so much for being here. I also want to mention this, you guys, because his bio is obviously impressive, but to know Dave as a person, he is so incredibly humble and kind and genuine. And I always really appreciate, he's absolutely brilliant, but he doesn't let that, the way he sees the world is probably, he gets the most complex things so simply, but he doesn't ever talk down to people or at people. He's just so incredibly generous with his knowledge and his time. And I've just always really admired that about you. So I wanted you to know that. So with that said, I'm going to hand things over, Dave. If you'd like to screen share, feel free, but share with us all about using our data in AI-powered operations.
Thank you so much for such a warm welcome, Jennifer. Good to see all of you. Happy to be here. Yeah, I thought, I would kick off with just talking a little bit, super quick, super high level about, let's call it the history of data. And that might sound super boring, but I'm going to do it quickly, and I think it'll frame up a few nice things for us. You guys seeing the screen okay? Just getting myself situated here so I can see all of you still on the other monitor. There we go. So yeah, we a little bit of history maybe before I start there on Query. We've been at this this little project for about 2 years now. And we kind of were born into the age of AI. So, we started Query about 2 months after ChatGPT came out. This problem of how difficult it is to work with data, though, is something I've been thinking about for probably 15 years, like a whole lot of my career, and never really knew how to do something much better than the status quo. And so to frame that a little bit, I thought I'd talk, just briefly about, where were we and how have we progressed through the last decades. Again, super quick, but in the beginning, data was super complicated to work with. There almost wasn't a way besides just writing code or doing it on paper. And the first real attempt at making data easy to use was the SQL query language, which is uh, a line of it that you see here, sort of English-like way of pulling data out of a relational database, which was invented back in the 70s. The company I was at, Oracle, was the first one to really commercialize this technology, and it made a big difference. But it's really programming and doing something even relatively complex beyond just get me a list of customers in the US, is a fairly complex thing to do. So then we had spreadsheets, and you all know spreadsheets, Excel, Google Sheets, VisiCalc if you go far back enough into history, and um, they're not going anywhere, right? Spreadsheets are the universal language of how we work with data, especially as business people. And it's a super powerful tool, super flexible. Again, not going anywhere, but you kind of hit limits all over the place of complexity, of processing power, of just being able to collaborate with other people on this, so on and so forth. So about somewhere around the year 2000, business intelligence became a category of software, and this is like Tableau was one of the first ones. Microsoft's Power BI came along. A bunch of different ones are built. Google has one called Looker that they acquired, I don't know, 5, 10 years back, and there's hundreds of these things. And they're really about being able to give a business user the ability to view data, generally graphically. So it's about dashboards, right? Maybe there's some filters, you can explore some data a little bit. But adoption of business intelligence has been historically quite low, and still is. Not that they're not great tools, but data itself is really complex. And I'm not going to get super into it, but um, things like if I have data that lives in two different systems, I have a CRM, and then I have a spreadsheet that's tracking some stuff about my customers, or I have an e-commerce system that I'm selling on, and then I have my product catalog in a different system. Or take your pick, any industry. A large organization, we've got a stat that says the average department at a big enterprise uses 87 different SaaS tools. The average small to medium sized business uses 12 plus, and they're all capturing data, and they tend to all have some ability to look at it, but they all do it differently. Everybody's made different decisions about, what a date column should be stored as, right? And they're not bad decisions, they're not wrong decisions, but they're different decisions. So then when you try to go pull that data together, it's really complex, and business intelligence was never really able to solve this. So we get into an era of being able to work with data in no code or low code environments. These usually look like a drag and drop building a graph, where Power Automate is Microsoft's big one here. There's tools like Alteryx, and big variety of these, where you essentially say I'm going to have this data, and now I'm going to grab this thing and say I want to filter by this, and then I grab another thing and say I want to now sort by this, and I grab another thing and say I want to join this, and you sort of drag and drop and put them together. And it's a visual programming environment, and programming is programming, and most people don't really want to do a lot of programming. So they're good solid tools, but it really hasn't bridged the gap between a non-technical business user who wants to get answers from their data. So, enter the age of AI, and specifically, we've used the term AI since the 80s. So really what I'm talking about today is the T in GPT, transformers, or large language models. This sort of almost cognitive reasoning capability of computers, where I can take my question, throw it into a computer, and the computer can understand it, right? I'm going to put that in air quotes, right? Because it's doing a whole bunch of stuff. It's still just math, but it's basically allowing me to not know this like SQL syntax that we started on. It's allowing me to throw a bunch of stuff in there, get some answers. And it really becomes about natural language, and a lot of that is the translation from our natural language into the computer language and back, so that a business owner, operational leader can actually go and get answers out of their data. And um, so what that brings us into is this, I'll call it the age of prompting. Like the way that we interact with computers is changing because AI allows us to do it with natural language, but it doesn't mean you can do just, throw anything into there. You have to learn how to ask the right questions. I'm going to come back to that point in just a second. But as kind of a quick little bonus set of thoughts here, I'm not going to spend too much time here, but a lot of people I find are sort of naturally really good at prompting, and then a lot of people it's fairly unnatural to them. So I wanted to give just a quick we'll spend 3 minutes here on like when you're asking AI to do something, how should you think about that? Number one, be explicit about your goals. So if you can tell the computer, my goal is to achieve this thing, um, that's a really useful framework of thinking about how to prompt a chat GPT or a query or any copilot, whatever these, like, it's in every tool right now. And so, really explicitly laying out your goals, super useful. Another really powerful idea is to give examples. So if you're trying to take, let's say you're trying to take a blog post and turn it into a LinkedIn post, and you just can't get it to do something in a very natural way. Giving it the data and then giving it 3 examples of I want you to do it something like this, and then and then hitting enter. Um, we have found in developing with LLMs that this is probably the most powerful technique to get reliable and consistent results out of a large language model. Number 3, take time to understand. So if you're asking a question about something you don't really understand, and AI can help you with this, take the time to understand basically the framework of what it is you're trying to develop. Whether that's working with data or building a blog post or creating a website, try to understand what a professional who's doing that would do, and then follow that progression. Going to be super helpful. When you really have kind of no starting point and you just start throwing questions at AI, your results will be less reliable, we'll say. Take the time to write. What I mean by this is don't just throw in a 1 sentence thing into ChatGPT and expect it to understand everything that you want. This kind of, number 1 and number 2 roll this together. But a lot of times when I'm prompting AI to get something, whether like I use it a lot for writing code, I use it for obviously, working with data, I use it for marketing tasks, I use it to build this slide presentation. And taking the time to write out 2 or 3 clear, paragraphs or a bunch of bullet points about what it is you're looking for, again, going to help you a lot. Context limits. So AI basically runs out of memory quickly, and we call that context. If you've worked with ChatGPT a lot, you'll notice that the longer the conversation goes, the more it seems to forget the thing at the top. This applies to everything that uses a language model. Shorter is better. It's somewhat contradicting my last point, but shorter to an extent. So if you get into sort of 30 pages worth of text, it's not going to be able to remember that. Your sweet spot is, a couple of pages, and it's going to work really well there. And then, last thing here, the whole amazing thing about AI very quickly. The business world is changing quickly. We're all trying to figure out how to keep up with that. And what AI allows you to do faster than you've ever been able to do before is iterate quickly, right? So there's a lot of AI tools out there that maybe don't give you the absolute best possible result that you might have gotten if you spent 3 months working on the project. But you can get something done and put out and live into the world in a day instead of 3 months. 5 minutes instead of 5 hours. And that ability to put something out in the world, experiment with it, and learn from it, I think is the most important business skill that we have. And it's something that AI is helping with, and that, prompting can really help to drive. So I don't want to spend too much more time on slides. I think I had a quick thing in here, and I'm not going to give a sales pitch. If you're not using ChatGPT, Google, Anthropic, those are three, large language model tools, all of them really powerful, all of them that have data analysis capabilities. What we're building here at Query goes beyond the large language model being able to do some data manipulation. We've really built an end-to-end tool that goes from integrations through to an automated evergreen dashboards. We're really building a data platform that has large language models at its heart. But if you are already subscribed to one of these other tools and you haven't tried throwing a spreadsheet or a CSV file in there to get a sense for what AI can help you do in answering questions, definitely encourage you to throw that in there. And obviously, we're here and happy to help, and help you go beyond the limitations that they have, of which they're not data platforms, they're chatbots, and they're incredibly powerful ones. But when you really want to use this day in, day out, we can go a little further. Um, I I told you, Jennifer, I might come on
You're
next slide.
perfect.
I thought I
Yeah.
threw this together real quick. Let's ask this question. Um, is AI here and being about, is it going to replace my job? Like, I'm a data analyst. Should I be worried about this? Or, I'm what, pick any role, right? Is AI going to replace me? And, it's hard to not have this conversation inside of any of this. And, I'm just going to answer quickly, and we can spend some more time in discussion about this. But, I'm going to say no, AI is not replacing people. And the biggest, sort of most important reason here is that AI doesn't know what questions to ask. And it's not that AI is perfect at everything. And there's a lot of things AI sort of technically isn't that great at so far, but it keeps getting better. It keeps evolving. If I were to do a few more slides, I might talk about I think we're sort of in the third generation already of like large language model AI capabilities, and that's in 2 years. So, things are moving very, very quickly. The capabilities are getting stronger, but the AI doesn't know what problem to try and solve. And I see AI as sort of the great level up tool in business. Is how do I go from where I was and then go do exponentially more based on my core expertise and drive and passion, whatever it is that I'm trying to do. There's just so many more things I can do more quickly, and AI is powering that. But I have to come to it with my goals, with my vision, with my ideas, and with my questions that I can get it to help me answer. So that's what I'm framing the conversation with.
Love it. I
And
love the brass knuckles in the AI generated image.
yeah,
So, something that's like top of mind. Thank you, Dave. That was really, really interesting to kind of understand what got us here and what we really need this information for. But, when you're talking about AI specifically, what just occurred to me is that AI is not capable of original thought, correct? Not in the way
there's
human
yeah,
can
there might be a
generate.
philosophical debate in there, but yeah, I agree with that statement.
Okay. So they can only take from what is out there. And I think that as human beings, that is what we are capable of. That has brought us all of the different iterations of technology that we've had,
Yeah.
because we've had those original thoughts, the what ifs. And so I'll put that out there. The most important question, Dave, is it data or data?
Yes.
It's like no matter what I say, it doesn't sound right coming out of my mouth. You guys, if you have questions, please put them in the chat for us, and I will certainly get to them. There's a couple questions I have for you, Dave, and then also to the audience, we are going to be offering a hot seat. So in a few more minutes, if anyone would like to offer up to have a hot seat and work directly one-on-one with Dave about a data challenge that you are facing, or you don't even know what to ask, put yourself out there, and we'd be happy to do it. And if no one volunteers, then I will be hot seating myself, which is super fun because I've got plenty of questions for you. So quick question for you. We talked about this in the waiting room before we went live today, because this came up. I'm a mentor in an accelerator program that last night we were discussing, how to use data as part of your exit strategy. So as an entrepreneur, I am not interested in bringing on investor money at this stage in my business. However, a lot of my peers are.
Yeah.
But beyond that, what I've learned about being a business owner is you always have to have the exit in mind, whether that's 10 years or 20 years out, it doesn't even matter, but you've got to build your business for whatever that exit is.
Yeah.
And the idea of using data or organizing and preparing your data for that can be really lucrative in creating a valuation for your business. So can you touch on that, of what that means? Because that was a really new concept for me.
Yeah. It's such a great question. Investors are metrics driven primarily. Most investors are finance people. They are very unlikely to understand your business anywhere close to the level that you do. And so the thing that they're going to use to evaluate whether your business is a good investment versus the 1,000 other businesses that they're looking at to potentially invest in is going to be the metrics. They're trying to compare apples to apples as best as they can. And the best way to do that is looking at, things like your growth metrics, the KPIs that you would be tracking inside of the business, your key performance indicators. So, whether that's how quickly are you growing, whether that's what your margins are, where your expansion opportunities are, right? Because if they're going to invest in your business or purchase your business, they want to see, okay, you've proven out a really specific set of things in this niche, and we can go and replicate that 10 other times. And all of that information lives in your data. And so, we can think about this a bunch of different ways. And, sometimes you say the word data, and it's like, well, what does that mean? I don't have like big data. I'm not Google. Well, data is just anything you can put into a spreadsheet, right? Whether that's your operational data, historically, where have you sold, who have you sold to, what type, if you're selling physical products, what are the trends? What's going up, what's going down, with what regions, with what customer profiles. All the information you have about your customers is valuable data. All of your operational historical things, looking at what type of margins are you getting today, what type of margins could you get to if you drove smarter decisions or had more buying power, right? Like all of these things are super interesting. And if you can build that into like the financial model of well, your investors are going to be trying to build this into a financial model. You need to at least be able to give them accurate metrics of where you are and what's happening. And I'll go back to what I said earlier. Your data probably lives in a dozen plus different systems. So, figuring out how to bring that together into the central KPI dashboard that you can look at on a weekly basis, and then go back and see historically, that's such a valuable thing to have in place. And it's all about being data driven. Now, M&A aside, getting that visibility is going to help you as a business owner to make much smarter decisions and drive up the valuation. You might find by getting in and asking the right smart questions of your data that you are losing money on these three customer segments and the vast majority of your profit is coming from a fourth customer segment that you might not have even fully recognized before. But the hints, the signals, the clues are sitting inside of your CRM system and your ERP systems and those Excel spreadsheets where you're tracking the operations. So finding those insights, ultimately the really disruptive thing about getting smart about being data driven is that you're able to then make much smarter decisions about where to spend your limited time and resources. And if you're running a business, those are extremely limited. So being able to be smarter about what to do with that is a super powerful idea.
Okay. I'm going off script, but it's a gift. What can I say? What are some really unique or interesting data points to look at that may not be name, phone number, address, right? Like, what might be some data points that would be really interesting to look at collecting? And I know that's going to vary based on the industry, the service, the product, but like, what are some things that we should be considering?
Yeah. Well, I think across industries it breaks down into a few things. We have, we're all selling something to people, right? That's what we're
Mhm.
in business to do. And so one of the things that I think about a lot is the word segmentation. So how do I break down, my list of products, my list of customers, and understand the differences between different groups? And
Mhm.
that's a very difficult thing to do, sort of eyeballing a spreadsheet. And it's a very straightforward thing for a computer to do. So some of it is just, getting a clean list of customers and a clean list of transactions, whatever those are. Or, if you're a nonprofit, it's donations, right?
Mhm.
Rather than transactions. But and so we can look at it all sorts of different ways. But on the revenue side of the business, it's really what am I selling and who am I selling it to? And then can I identify trends inside of that? So, the key metrics will change some, but maybe it's lifetime value is a super interesting thing to think about of how long do different customers stay with me in my business. And so understanding that is super important. Cost of acquisition to the investors, they're going to look at that a lot, right? Like if you can understand those two things, how much does it cost for me to bring in a new customer, and then what is the lifetime value of that customer, you can make a lot of smart decisions. But if you can segment that down and say, hey, like we have a plumbing business that we're working with, very, very regional. But if we can break that down and say, well, this zip code, the lifetime value is X, and this zip code, the lifetime value is Y for these customers, and it costs me the same amount of advertising dollars to get a customer in either one. Well, guess what? It's not hard to target your advertising into a particular zip code. Go put more money into the one that's making you more money, and your business becomes more profitable. So, I think a lot of it is about understanding what are those key metrics that drive your business.
Right.
Um, what are the things that an investor would look at? So that's the revenue side of the house. Just spend a moment on the cost side of the house.
Yeah.
Everything operationally is going to be super important to look at as well. And half a dozen metrics that you could look at there and think about, and then understand where are the biggest drivers and how can I influence that so that the cost comes down and now my profit goes up.
Well, on that note, and kind of back to that first scenario for the plumber that occurred to me immediately is think of how much more efficient that truck will be when they're not zigzagging all over
Yeah.
town,
Yeah.
right? When they are concentrated, they're going to be able to do more calls, less fuel.
Hmm.
It's going to be more profitable all around because it'll be far more efficient.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, I'm going to ask you my three questions now. And then again, if anyone would like to hot seat, just raise your hand, let us know in the chat, or you can reach out to Joey or myself with a DM. But I'm ready to go because I've got good questions for you. The first question, Dave, is what is the biggest misconception about your industry?
Such a good question. Um, I think the biggest misconception about, I could slice my industry a few different ways, but I'll say data, the data industry, broadly speaking. I think the biggest misconception today is that it's too complicated. And historically, I think that has been true. It has been very difficult for somebody who's not trained in data tools to go and get answers. And what that leads to is a, a significant number, large majority of business decisions get made without the benefit of data. You know, and that's true, by large amounts in small to medium sized businesses. But I've worked with huge enterprises as well that are basically operating at the same level. When they're not sort of very tech focused businesses, everybody's just running around with their spreadsheets and it becomes very complicated. But there's been such a significant shift in the last 2 years of what is possible with technology through AI that, I think the misconception we're working really hard to break down is that data's not for me. Data's sort of big and scary, and I can only work with it if I go and get a degree in it. It's really not the case. And here's kind of the secret about our industry that I'll tell you is that the people who are really good at working with data in traditional tools are not the people who have the questions to ask. Like, they don't actually know what to do with it. And so a lot of that becomes very, very challenging. And the flip side of that is that, the people who know the questions to ask, they're not really asking them because they don't have the ability to. So I think maybe that's a double answer to your question, but that's kind of the truth that's driving the fact that we really can go and get these answers now. It's
Yeah.
it's really it's really not anywhere close to as complicated as it used to be.
And I'll also add what you already mentioned, which is this misconception that AI is trying to replace us or that
Yeah,
AI is going to take our jobs. And so I think kind of those are all layered on each other
yeah.
to just create a lot of confusion. Um, why do you believe that being a disruptor is so important in this space?
Well, the amount of cost and pain that goes into trying to work with data historically is just so enormous. I think that, I look at things that I've done in the past that, took 6, 9, 12 months to, migrate some data from one thing to another, or, 3 months back and forth with a data science team to try to answer what seemed like it could be a pretty straightforward question. Um, I think that amount of just waste within trying to get those answers is huge. But I want to say even more important to me on that is I think we're entering an era where with AI, people can start to do the things that they're really, really passionate about
Mhm.
and stop doing the things that are very painful. And there's kind of a broader AI point, but when it comes to data, if you're a great painter and you want to spend more of your time painting, you still have to figure out how to run the business. You still have to figure out how to sell and market and get your art out into the world. And if that's not something you're passionate about, you shouldn't have to become passionate about that in order to have a successful business. And I think, this kind of the ultimate power of AI is to be able to put those things you don't want to be doing, you're not great at, you're not passionate about, and find that core skill set that you really are great at and go drive after that. And so when it comes to working with data specifically, that's an area I've been passionate about for a long time. I want to see people be able to just get their job done the job they care about and get out of the sort of side job of data wrangling and analysis, and be able to, move on with the things they really care about.
I love that. And then this is the question that we get the most feedback on, and people go nuts because it's so tactical. And I'm a quick start, so I love a to-do list. Um, with all of this information that you reviewed today, and thank you so much for all of this. Joey, would be a great time to put Dave's contact information in the chat. With all of this information today, what's the number one thing that we can all do today with an extra 30 minutes in our calendars? Haha, who's got that? What can we do to put this into motion, to take action, and to drive some revenue to our businesses using our data?
Yeah. Um, it's such a good question. Again, I think there's a handful of things that I would say you want to look at. One is, do you know where your data lives? And if you even have access to it, right? There's sort of an audit question in there. That's one of the first things we work with customers on, is like, can we figure out where these signals exist and how we could start pulling them together? Um, the second one, probably the most like broadly impactful, is if you have not been experimenting with AI tools. If you're a holdout, I would say go for it. Don't be overly concerned of what's going to happen there. I mean, there's things I should tell you about. Don't go throw sensitive data into ChatGPT. um, there's one reason, sales pitch aside, that query is a powerful tool, is we don't use data for anything, aside from just answering your questions. It's all walled off and secured, and all of that. But this slide that I put up earlier, of like, we are in the age of prompting. You can take classes, you can read guides, I can tell you all of my tips, but if you're not using the technology on a fairly regular basis, you're not going to build up kind of this muscle of how to use AI efficiently, and when to use it, and when is it going to be crap, and when is it going to save you 8 hours. So, I would say, if you're not in those tools, if you're not on ChatGPT or Gemini or Anthropic, or one of these things, and trying to use it on a somewhat regular basis, I'd say you're missing out. And one of the things I hear said all the time is, AI is not going to replace you, but a person who's good at using it might. And so, you want to it's a new business skill, right? So you want to be doing that. But specific to the data side, I would say the biggest thing out of what we've talked about is, if you know what your KPIs are and you're not tracking them, then the first thing to do with your data is start tracking those. Figure out how to pull that together and just make it visible. It doesn't have to be a giant monitor on your wall. Software companies do that a lot, but it could be just something you pull up every Monday. Could be something, you look at it on a regular basis and understand the business, and then drill into that some. I think is really powerful. So KPIs, getting visibility there. And then the other thing is just looking at, like, the other big question we ask customers, or prospects even, is like, let's look for the places where you're spending way too much time doing data manipulation tasks today, and let's find out if that can be automated to free up that 30 minutes or 8
Wow.
hours or 15 hours to go and focus on the core aspects of your business. Like,
Right.
there's a lot of automation tooling, and it's a lot of it's built into query, but there's other tools out there that are getting just incredibly good at being able to, with AI, with integrations and all of that, automate a lot of the things that you might otherwise be doing on a day-to-day basis. And if you can find a way to get out of that, like, the really, I think, most important thing as a business owner, or wherever you're at in the business trying to grow it, is like, how do you step away and get that headspace to where you can actually think about the right questions to be asking
Yeah.
in the business. You know, so many of us get just into the weeds on a day-to-day basis, and you wait till your annual offsite before you think about, did I actually spend the last 12 months doing something useful? So, if we can get to where we're doing that daily, weekly, stepping out, going out and, watching the water glisten. And if you're lucky enough to be close to some beautiful water, as Jennifer said, or, whatever it is, go and get that time away and think about what's important. I think that's where the real value is. So looking for ways to just stop doing the manual repetitive stuff that is not giving you joy, and being able to focus on how to grow your business, or be a healthier person, right? It's not necessarily all about how do I maximize the revenue of my business, right? Sometimes
Oh,
it's about how do I step away from it and make sure that I'm okay.
let's work smarter. This is a tool that we have. You know what came through for me, Dave, when you were talking about AI, people who have AI will replace you. Do you guys remember way back when you used to put like under skill set MS Office?
Hmm.
You guys remember that? We used to list that as a skill set.
Hmm.
Does that ever exist anymore? I don't know because I haven't had a resume in a long time. But when you look at them, people aren't putting that on resumes anymore because it's like saying, I know the alphabet. Like I know how to sit in a chair. Of course,
Yeah.
who doesn't know Office at this point?
Right.
So I think that in another decade, within the next decade or less, probably the way it's going to be the same for AI. We're going to be putting it on our resumes as part of our skill sets now. But then going forward, you will be left behind if it's not, because it will be such a basic of our everyday, the way MS Office is now.
Yeah.
Does that resonate?
It really does, because it's like, we could pull all sorts of examples. A farmer wouldn't farm without a tractor
Right,
anymore, right? You wouldn't do complex math without a calculator, right?
right,
You're not gonna deliver packages on a horse-drawn buggy, right? It's just like the technology comes along, and you have to adopt it at some point.
right.
And for different people, different roles, maybe it's more important for some than others, but I think across the board, it's critical.
I love it. Okay, guys, I'm going to throw myself into a quick hot seat with you, Dave. Um, and I'll kind of ask a question that I think is probably going to be relevant to a lot of people on this call and listening to us on YouTube and in the podcast. Man, I love what we're doing here. um, I have most of my data, and I'm really thinking now, I have to tell you, I'm thinking now about all of the SaaS platforms that we're using because I haven't really considered that sort of data. So I'm gonna have to go back and rethink this. But for now, the data that lives in my CRM,
Yeah.
I don't think that I'm optimizing that. I use Zoho, I have for decades.
Hmm.
But I don't think I'm optimizing that. Do you recommend using the platform's AI option? Or are you better kind of exporting and importing into third party? Like what's kind of the best way when you haven't really examined your data to get it cleaned up,
Hmm.
and to start putting it into a tool for yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, where we like to start with people is just getting an understanding of what data do you actually have. And this is where a data scientist is going to start. If you commission somebody to come in and do some massive project with you, you're going to start here as well. Is like, let's figure out what exists and just understand it at a high level. So the process, to use kind of the technical term here that we would start with is exploratory data analysis.
Okay.
So, the starting point is like, let's just get it and let's understand, where does the data start and where does it end, right? Basic descriptive stuff and counts. And one of the things we're super big on at Query, and it's easy to do it in the tool, is you load the data in and you start asking for visualizations. So, one of the things I like to do with the AI power in there, if I'm working with a new data set, is just draw me 10 different graphs to understand the shape of the data. And Query will kind of look at what's in there and think about it and and decide, I'm gonna show you how many, customers you added per month versus prospects, and how many, uh, how much business have you closed per year, and some of these kind of high level KPI metrics, and just understand, what do I have and what do I not have. And one of the really interesting things in there is like, where are the gaps? What's missing? And so that could be like, maybe at some point, this is super common in CRM tracking, at some point you were really diligent about, tracking win reasons and loss reasons, and you did that
Mhm.
for 12 months and then that trailed off. And, even just understanding, does that exist inside of the data? Um, that helps you decide what kind of questions can you be answering out of your data, right? So if you don't have a consistent amount of win loss data, reasons in the field
Yeah.
that you might stick in there, you probably can't answer a very, realistic question from that data about what are all the reasons that um, you win business or lose business. So that's kind of the starting point, and usually through that process of just understanding the shape of the data, you learn some really valuable things. Like, that's
Okay.
just such a big starting point, is just looking at those trends from there. The second thing there, I would say, I come back to segmentation. Like, okay, I understood my overall trend.
Yeah.
How can I break that down and start understanding things like, what region or what industry, or what product is leading to my highest and lowest amounts of revenue? Which ones are driving my highest and lowest amount of costs? If you're tracking that somewhere, because those insights are kind of the biggest drivers, I think, of making good business decisions. And it's not hard to get at a lot of those. Like, once you have the data pulled into a tool and can start to drill into it some, you're able to do that. And what I'll add there, CRMs tend to have some analytics capabilities. Most tools tend to have some amount of analytics capabilities. Where they tend to start falling off is at the segmentation, really being able to kind of drill in and compare different trends among different groups. Maybe there's some filters and you can kind of explore it by, looking at one versus looking at the other. But this process of like really kind of getting your hands dirty with the data and understanding what's happening in there is something that, yeah, that's where you want to figure out how to get your data out. And this is in our first conversation with a new customer, is like, where does the data live and can you access it? Most SaaS platforms will have a button somewhere. It's in reports or it's in analytics. Maybe you have to build the report first, but there is a download CSV or download XLS button somewhere in the interface most of the time. And getting familiar with that, so you can kind of pull it down and get it into a spreadsheet. That's the format that Query works with as well. So you pull it in as an Excel file or CSV file or other standard formats. You can upload it into our tool and others, to be able to work with it. Like CSV, as stands for comma separated values. That's like the universal data format. Everything can read it, everything can write it. So if you know how to get at that, then you can go get it. And I would say that's just generally good practice, right? If you're using a lot of SaaS tools, know how to get your data out of them, right? Your
Yeah,
data is one of your biggest assets. And if it's all locked up in something that could conceivably go away one day, you know, you want to make sure you have access to that.
yeah. I'll also add, and this is someone who has next to zero automations in my own operations, but I've been using Zapier recently so
Yeah,
that I'm not manually moving data from one platform to another.
yeah,
And man, where has it been all my life? I mean, why didn't I do this sooner? It was so easy to do. Even I could do it. So literally a trained monkey could handle this. Because it saved me so many tiny little minute tasks
mhm,
that it's not like I've got all this free time now. I'm now using that time for actual things that Zapier can't do, right?
yeah, yeah.
So finding automation is amazing. I do want to get to one quick question and then we've got to run. Um, the data wrangling pain is real. For example, our core HCM, this is from Nicole, sorry, doesn't actually have a resort as a true field. It's a ton of manual case. When statements in report builder and depending on who built reports, some businesses units aren't included and spelling is all over the place. Sorry, I'm trying to go fast here. I had to build name standardization sheets to be able to effectively deal with the data from different reports written by different people. It was just sort of stupid. How does Query solve for things like this?
Yeah. Great question, Nicole. It's like, this is every data project, right? When you get into the real world and try to do anything with data, you're always wrangling. It's always messy. We built a tool inside of Query. We call it the researcher, but the core capability of it is to be able to read through row by row of data with large language models and be able to extract data out of things like notes fields and description fields and all of that and standardize it. Um, it's not the only way to go, but it's something we built specifically for this kind of use case. Is like, there's no standardization. How do I actually go and analyze it? Could be a notes field, could it be product descriptions, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
um,
Nicole, man, do I see that. We've got that in my own CRM too, because I've had different reps and different account executives, different people that I've managed that just don't follow the standard that I've asked them to. So
yeah,
that's super valuable.
yeah,
Thank you so much for being here. We have Dave's information in the chat if you guys would like to contact, learn more about Query. I highly recommend you guys set up a demo. I mean, it is such a phenomenal tool. The clients that we have working with Query absolutely love it. It's a game changer in time saved and productivity and also the information that you can pull from it that you didn't even know you needed. And that's where it gets really interesting. Next week, we have April Beach talking about licensing. As some of you guys may know, licensing has been a big part of our focus at Appreciated Asset over the last 6 months or so. And we are super, super excited to have her here talking about how to leverage your expertise and your content into creating licensing agreements for yourself. And I'm super excited about this one. Dave, again, thank you so much for being here, for your partnership, and just being the rock star you are. We appreciate you so much. And I hope everyone, you guys, have the very best day.
thank you, Jennifer. Thank you all for joining.
Bye, guys.
You.